Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Pilgrims, here we go again. Andy Walker, welcome back to the Missing Links Golf Show. Wonderful to have you.
Thanks, buddy. Looking forward to this episode. It's been a little while coming.
Bit of a different one.
A topic that I think we're both very interested in, yet have not explored as yet on the show.
That is particularly true. Bit of an obscure one. We've got a special guest joining us in this episode, a guest who reached out to us after hearing about our fantastic show and our great story. And as with many people, his reaction was, I need to be part of this. This just sounds amazing. So he sent us an email, and we're fortunate to get him on the show. And we're going to hear a little bit about that quirky topic of hypnosis, Andy Walker.
Yes. And not the hypnosis that I think most people would be familiar with. But hypnosis is something that's been used by all the great, and well, not just great golfers, but a lot of great sportsmen and women over the past few years. So it's something that I've heard about, but in all honesty, know absolutely nothing about, apart from the hypnosis that you see up on stage in a show, which I'm pretty confident is not what we're talking about.
Oh, but wouldn't it be fun if it is? Wouldn't it though? Yeah. Like if we end up just, Andy Walker, when I click my fingers, you will go to sleep and you will wake up.
I'll cluck like a chicken.
Will you cluck like a chicken? That is a good question. That is a good question. But no, it's an interesting one because obviously, we've delved a little bit, and as everyone would be aware, somewhat unsuccessfully into the world of meditation and mindfulness. This is probably along those lines, but taking it that step further with someone that's actually trained in the space. And yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to hear a little bit more about what the process is, what the benefits could be, all those sorts of things. So I'm curious to see where this conversation leads us. Andy Walker, Paul Salter is our guest's name, and he's looking to unstuck ourselves, I think is the phrase. So
yes,
should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Shall we cut to the chase and get him on the show?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right, let's do it. It is a huge welcome to the Missing Links Golf Show to Paul Salter. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Mate, this is very, very cool. As we mentioned in the intro, Paul reached out to us just a little while ago now via email, raising a topic that both of us have been a little bit curious about. A little bit nervous about, I think. And I think we probably both sit somewhere on the spectrum between believer and skeptic. I don't know. And I think that's probably fair to say that a lot of the pilgrims will be there somewhere. But Paul, maybe this would be the chance for you to jump in and tell us about who you are, what you do, what your business is all about, and how you might help golfers.
Absolutely. So I am a mindset coach and hypnotherapist, and I specifically help a variety of high performers get unstuck and out of their own way so they can unlock their full potential. Now, specific to our beloved game of golf, the way I like to phrase it is the golf course is no shortage of physical hazards on the course. Where I come in is helping the individual golfer overcome both the mental and emotional hazards of their minds so that they can get unstuck from the proverbial bunker of poor performance and play to their potential.
Nice.
That's awesome. Proverbial bunker. I love it. I love it. So
I can tell you personally, there's a few bunkers there at the moment. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah,
you're not alone. Trust me.
Yeah, there's definitely a few bunkers. We were talking in our previous episode, which we aptly called the plateau of frustration, about the fact that both of us seem to have hit this level where they're different levels, bear in mind, but we've hit a level of development where we kind of have just stalled a little bit. Now, I don't know, is that mental? Is that physical? Is it a combination? Funnily enough, Andy, I was also thinking about this, that a lot of golfers crave consistency, and there we were just whinging about it in the last episode, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But how does your approach, I think, Paul, sort of address those types of things, like when you're kind of hitting that glass ceiling, I guess, is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So believe it or not, this is probably the most popular area or opportunity of growth I work on with my clients. And you think of clients who are already, the scratch golfers, even the +1, 2, and the handicaps and competitive golfers. What that glass ceiling is typically linked back to is a fear of success, is a collective feeling of feeling unworthy, undeserving, or incapable of getting to that next level. Now, you two and perhaps the listeners are thinking fear of success, that's backwards. I crave success. But the truth is, when it comes to breaking through that glass ceiling and ascending to the next level of success, it absolutely requires an identity change. What is our identity composed of? It's the words we use to speak to and about ourselves, our thoughts, our beliefs, our habits. That collectively influences our results, which shapes our identity. So the problem is, in order to make that leapfrog, to craft this new identity, as much success as that may come with, it may also come with pressure, with expectations, more attention, more being in the spotlight, more responsibilities that, to be frank, a part of you might not want at all. That might not be why you play the game of golf. And then second to that is when you make that big jump towards the next level of success, you run the risk of either being judged, abandoned, or rejected by your tribe, by your peer group. I call that the fear jar: fear of judgment, abandonment, and rejection. All of us human beings are wired with those three core fears because centuries and centuries ago, our ancestors died if they were ostracized or rejected by the tribe, whether it be starvation or saber-toothed tiger. Death was the literal likely outcome. As crazy and as irrational as it sounds today, when the three of us are talking about having our every want and need imaginable on Google or at our fingertips, it's still a really strong primal fear that we have to navigate. So that glass ceiling, like I said, it's typically linked back to that fear of success or being unworthy or feeling like we're unworthy of actually achieving it.
So, Paul, Steve and I have had this conversation a few times. Is this similar to, say, you've got a handicap, say your handicap's 15, right? And your I guess your identity is I'm a 15 handicapper, and you keep telling yourself that I'm a 15 handicapper. Is that sort of a similar concept? Is that sort of part of it where you're identifying as a certain golfer right now? But hypnotherapy can help you unwind that belief system, that framework, to be able to move you forward to maybe saying, well, no, I'm a single figure handicap, or I have the potential to be a single figure handicapper. Is that sort of similar to what you're talking about?
That's a great framework to use to discuss the possibility. Absolutely. So first and foremost, if you're already limiting yourself, keeping yourself, stuck as a 15 handicapper, you're not doing yourself any favors, making it easier to move down into single digits. So you're correct. We need to create a sense of conviction, belief that you are capable, worthy, and deserving of becoming a single digit handicapper. And then alongside of that, we need to start empowering you to feel safe achieving that goal. So I'm so glad you used the 15 handicap example, and I'll tell you why. A lot of clients I work with fall in that range. And one of the under the radar threats, and I use threat very loosely here, it's a game of golf, it's not truly threatening,
yeah,
but is if all of our mates are around a 15 handicap and we go out once a week and we put a couple bucks on it, we have fun with our friends, we're competing and we're winning maybe the majority of the time. What happens if all of our mates remain 15 handicaps and we all of a sudden are a 6 or a 7? Maybe there's resentment. Maybe there's envy, there's jealousy, there's judgment, there's bitterness. And maybe that suddenly, even if it's under the surface, it's a little tension. little tension between the relationship. Maybe you don't get invited to play one of the weekends. So there's an extra outing you're overlooked for because you're too good now, or you take the game too seriously. As silly as it sounds, that's a real common experience and a threat to just the camaraderie of your weekly golf group with some of your best mates.
Okay, so you're effectively there. You're exorcist from the. I didn't really frame that very well, but
you're an exorcist.
You're exorcist from the tribe, apparently. So you're effectively thrown out of the tribe, yeah.
Yeah, in a nutshell, absolutely.
And this can happen. I think I do recall the first time I sort of heard. It may have even been on other podcasts listening to you talk about this topic, and I was kind of thinking, it's a bit out there, it's a bit extreme, but at the same time, I do think as your improvement curve happens that your self-perception has to shift, but also the perception of others of you shifts as well. May not always be as extreme as getting ostracized rather than exercised, Andy, out of the group, but it definitely shifts, right? And the way that you approach the game shifts. And I know I have had that experience, having shifted from around 15 to kind of higher single digits over the last couple of years, and the way you approach the game does change. But there's a long-winded way of bringing me back to the question, which is you used 3 words: capable, worthy, and deserving. Now, I just want to unpack that a little bit, because I've been battling with this, I think, without having the words to describe it. In terms of improvement, I think I'm feeling capable, but I don't know if I'm feeling worthy, of getting down to sort of low single digits towards scratch. So that's a really interesting set of words. Maybe you can just talk about why you've chosen those and what they mean.
Absolutely. So we think of, I like to liken the word confidence, or rather the experience and feeling of confidence, as kind of like the most powerful drug or experience we can ever really have. It's intoxicating. And you and I, the 3 of us, both know when we hit that golf ball in the sweet spot, we're hitting and playing confidently. Whew, I mean, there's rarely any other feelings that can really match that. So underneath confidence is feeling belief, or feeling that I am worthy, deserving, and capable. There's a resounding belief there. And the reason we always trace back to these 3 core beliefs is in childhood, we all have these critical childhood needs that need to be met to foster the appropriate physiological, emotional, and psychological growth. So childhood needs such as acceptance, connection, belonging, and love, all of those need to be met. When they are not met, our subconscious is incredibly brilliant, to say the least, will start deploying several various coping mechanisms. This is why, in a very large, overarching general stereotype here, the eldest of multiple siblings typically leans more towards that type A OCD perfectionist mentality. As more siblings come into the picture, they lose less of mom and dad's attention, time, and energy. So they have to find a way to stand out, to say the least. It's during those formative years that if you don't have the parents, the guardians, or the upbringing and experience that reinforces you are worthy of love, you are deserving of success, of achievement, that we find ways to try to crave it and seek it in other fashions as we get older. The lingering problem of not having some of those needs fully met in childhood years is we don't fully feel we're deserving later on in adulthood. So it's a long answer, I know, to your question, with the through line being a lot of my work is revolved around going back in time. Using hypnosis rather than thinking ahead is going back to some of those pivotal moments in your life where that childhood need was not met, and allowing that to be an opportunity to either heal, reframe, or add different perspective to satisfy that need being met, which has a very positive and powerful ripple effect all the way into the present moment.
So, Paul, if I understand that correctly, then what you're saying is that the not necessarily the issues, but say the plateau that you're on at the moment as a golfer, the reason why you're on a plateau is not necessarily golf related.
Spot on. And I wish more I talked with, the more I spoke with, understood that. You put it brilliantly. It is that simple. A lot of the work that I do, even a lot of other mindset coaches, it has nothing to do with the game of golf. As much as we can try to separate the human from the golfer and we think compartmentalization is a superpower, it is until it isn't. At the end of the day, that performance pressure, that anxiety, that anger management, that poor emotional control, Those are a collection of learned beliefs and behaviors that start with just you as the human. They might be triggered on the golf course, but I have a strong imagination. If you struggle with anger on the golf course, it is not isolated to the golf course. It shows up professionally and at home as well.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, there's so much in all of that. And listening to you answer that question and talking about childhood and talking about, all of those elements that you talked about was a little bit scary and a little bit confronting, I've got to be honest. So I feel like I'm probably a candidate that needs to sit down on the couch and have a session with you at some point, Paul. But look, I think there's a lot in there, and it links as well, I think, to a concept called imposter syndrome that people talk a lot about in a work setting, in a professional setting. Is that a similar topic? Are we talking about the same things there?
Yeah, there's definitely parallels or interconnectedness there, because at the end of the day, that fear of success, that lack of feeling safe at the next level of success is analogous to, like, I don't deserve to be here. Like, I'm an imposter. There's no way I deserve to, hoist the club championship trophy or be a scratch golfer.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I feel those feelings when I've got a good round going, and, and I think there's a lot of people that fit into this bracket where, say you're at around under par, through a few holes, and you've got, whether it's 9 or 18, you've got a few holes remaining, and then there's this feeling of, well, it's like, this is not me. I can't hold this together. When is the blow up hole coming? All of those sorts of thoughts. Help me get rid of them, Paul.
Yeah. And what's unique about that too is oftentimes we're waiting for the blow up hole. Yet more often than not, it's actually an accumulation of gradual small changes that when we reflect back on our round, it's like, wait a second, why did I do that? Or why did I not do that? Why did I make that decision? Or I don't top the ball. That's not me. I haven't topped the ball in 3 rounds or 3 years. So as much as the blow up hole, believe me, it comes. I just had one the other day. It happens to all of us. But the little things add up to pack a very powerful punch as well. We start letting some of our routines slip, some of our little non-negotiables, to-dos, and part of our processes get left by the wayside. And lo and behold, the last 3 holes are a blur, and we finish 6 over on those 3 holes and wondering what in the world just happened.
Sound familiar, Andy Walker?
Yeah, it does. I'm also interested to understand how language and the way that you talk to yourself impacts your goal. Well, not just golf, but life as well. I actually was listening to you on another podcast recently, and you mentioned that we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative.
Ouch.
So I would think that then the way that you talk to yourself and being proactive about the way that you talk to yourself is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, spot on. So I don't remember where I heard this. I don't know if it's a fact or just a way of thinking about words. But if you think about what is the name of the construction and the ordering of letters to form a word, it's spelling. Like insinuating there is a magic spell of these words. These words are emotional, energetic vesicles. These words bring that emotional energy to permeate your thoughts, your beliefs, and your behaviors. And the simple example I like to give is, let's say you're talking about a mundane chore you have to do after a long work day. So you're talking to yourself, I have to vacuum after work today. It's negative. There's a sense of dread to it. A simple word choice going from I have to I get to vacuum today. I mean, you heard my exaggerated tone change, my volume change, but that little word choice goes a long way in just reframing the entire emotional experience present. And if we extrapolate that into how we are talking to ourselves or about ourselves on and away from the golf course, all we're doing is creating an opportunity to send positive energy into our thoughts, which are reflected back to us in what we believe about ourselves, what we believe we are worthy, deserving, and capable of, which inspires us to take the right action to achieve our desired results. So in short, yeah, they are powerful as can be.
Yeah. So coming back to sort of what Steve was talking about before about that worthiness, I would expect that the way that you're talking to yourself and changing that up to be, to have a better framework would certainly help with what Steve's working on.
You're spot on. And I think so many of us, and myself included for a long time, when we think of the power of positive thinking and the power of positive self-talk, we initially think it has to be this over the top, I am the most positive person in the world. And coming from someone who's listening who might really struggle with being even remotely kind to themselves, that it just seems so far extreme. It's hard to even digest and fathom doing. So I often like to tell people, rather than overblowing the amount of positive talk, how can you move the needle from at least negative to neutral? And start making baby steps towards having at least a more neutral or attitude of indifference, because then at least you open up the door for an opportunity for some of those positive thoughts to start coming in and sticking. And then you can build momentum and it feels a bit more natural and becomes easier to latch on to those positive thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also interesting talking about sort of words. I again, from another podcast that I listened to, the guy was saying that he doesn't like when someone says, "Oh, I got this," or "You've got this," because the brain knows BS when it's when it hears it, right? And if you're telling yourself, "I got this," but every fiber of your being is saying that you don't have this, your brain actually realizes it. So he sort of likes to reframe it to back yourself, which sort of is a bit more, you back yourself. It may not necessarily, the outcome may not necessarily be what you end up wanting, but you're always backing yourself, even if you feel uncomfortable in that situation.
That's a really great point. I mean, if you don't believe in yourself, why can you expect anybody else to? So you're right. You've got to back yourself. And then you said a really important word there as well, is you can focus on your process. You can't control that outcome, but you can get really excited about what you can control, which always is your effort, your attitude, and the specific actions you take.
Now, Andy and I have a relatively large tournament coming up in a couple of weeks. Spoiler alert to the Pilgrims. We did both get into the field. We're quite excited about this. It is the New South Wales Country Championship, so a fairly large tournament in the scheme of things in golf in our part of the world. Now, the reason that I raise it is because to get into the field, you have to be a single-digit handicapper to put your application in. There's 120 spots in the field, and if there's more than 120 applicants, the higher the handicaps on the list start getting pushed out. I have sneaked into the field with currently a 9.1 handicap, which makes me feel that I'm probably the highest handicapper in the field. So I'm looking at this tournament with, a lot of excitement, but at the same time, the nerves are starting to build a little bit, thinking, am I going to embarrass myself? Can I keep up with these other guys? And it's funny because we've done so much work over the past year about coming back to process and forgetting about outcomes and, understanding that no one else really cares what your performance is like anyway, so why would you worry about what they think? But all of these things are starting to sneak back in. So, this is a bit of a microcosm of things that I know a lot of people go through on a regular basis, but I'm curious about, for my own selfish needs, what are some techniques that can be put into place to try and address some of these feelings that are starting to build?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And you're right. Like, the situation is so relatable. In fact, John Sherman just mentioned a couple weeks ago, the first tee of one of his tournaments, he topped the ball. He's like, I haven't topped the ball in 10 years. I'm a +2 handicap. But there I was, and I topped the ball. Like, it happens. And he still bogeyed the hole and went on to shoot an incredibly better score than I have yet to shoot, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I think it's recognizing that the collection of emotions you feel, the nerves, the anxiety, the fear of judgment, embarrassment, whatever it may be, they are normal. They are also learned. So we can talk some technical X's and O's in a moment, but the broader picture, to go deeper rather than wider with multiple techniques, is all of those emotions are learned. Hypnosis is a fast, powerful, effective tool to help you unlearn or at least significantly desensitize yourself to that collective emotional experience. Because what we don't want to do is try to repress, block, or hide from those nerves. So the simple reframe is those nerves are just proof you deserve to be here. You're here. It's an opportunity. It's the opportunity you've worked so hard to achieve. But now it's through hypnosis, what we're able to do is go back to some of those pivotal moments in your life where you felt this same collection of emotional experience, those same physical sensations, whether they're butterflies, tightness, tension in your chest or your shoulders. And we can use that as a catalyst to go back to some of the moments in your life you also felt this way until we uncover the origin. So we can start, in essence, turning down the volume of that anxiety, that pressure, those nerves, which allows your nervous system in totality to feel a bit more comfortable, at ease, a bit more familiar going through this emotional experience, which ultimately empowers you to no longer act from a place of unconscious reaction, which is tense, tight, fearful, and instead make the subtle yet powerful shift from unconscious reaction to conscious response. And it is there you tap into a reservoir of power and limitless opportunity to play fearless, confident golf.
So fearless, confident golf, I think, is a place that we all want to get to. I've done a bit of reading about and listening to people talking about breathing exercises and, the importance of regulating the nervous system through breathing exercises. Is this sort of something that you would recommend as well, or are we talking different disciplines here?
You're 100%. That is my go-to. It's one of the first things I teach every client I work with. You have to not only have a foundational understanding of your breath, the power that it possesses, but then also actionable confidence using your breath in certain moments. Because let's be frank, there's the side of the coin we're talking about when we're so nervous, we have to calm ourselves and bring our emotions down. But also across a 4.5 or 5 hour round, when we're only actually playing golf for 5 minutes, sometimes we need to bring our focus and energy back up. And the breath is capable of doing or accomplishing both of those goals.
I might have to do a little bit of work on this, Andy Walker. Meditation's another one that we often talk about.
Yes.
and we laugh because we're rubbish. We've, kind of delved into it on and off throughout the course of the last year. To be honest with you, Paul, we've struggled with seeing it through and with the feeling, I don't think this is unusual, but like the feeling of a bit of self-indulgence of actually saying, I'm going to sit in a quiet room for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and focus on not doing anything when there's so many competing priorities for my time that need, things that need to be addressed, be it family, be it work, be it, other things that need to be done.
Can we unpack this?
Yeah. Please do. That's what we need, because we have battled with this for the last year. We can't actually find a way through it.
So there's so many. This is such a good, common, relatable example. Like, you're not alone there. I still struggle with this too. I mean, there's two angles I want to approach it. First and foremost, I'm curious, is there almost like a challenge or a resistance you feel making the time to stop and do nothing?
Probably.
Yeah. So you're first and foremost, not alone there. But at the end of the day, and you've likely heard this cliche before, but like, you're a human being, not a human doing. And so often, especially with social media and just society the way it is today, we're conditioned to go, go, go. We have to be doing, doing, doing. I once read or heard, I hope I don't butcher this, that the voice of the subconscious is silence. And if we think of our subconscious as home to our intuition, imagination, and creative source, it is when we actually slow down and be, and we achieve that quietude of nothingness, that we can truly connect with ourselves. I have struggled, and if you've ever listened to my podcast, I have struggled with this false sense of urgency my entire life, this need, this feeling like I have to always be doing something. It's not safe to slow down. And that's a little bit of what I might be hearing from you, is that deep down, and again, it might sound silly talking about it on a conscious level now, but it doesn't feel safe to slow down, to stop what I'm doing, because there's so many things to do. The moment I stop, I'm actually falling behind is kind of the general feeling. I'm curious, does that resonate with either one of you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And certainly for me, as well. It's also, and it's probably my own understanding where this comes from. It is, when I've tried to sit down and meditate and spend any time, in that sort of silence, sort of mind space, I end up thinking, oh, I could be working on my short game here. Like, I could be going out and putting. I could be working on my swing. So and again, that's I get that's not silence, but I always, I guess, my mind, my subconscious questions, how, in my limited time, how worthwhile it is to be spending time on this rather than doing, I guess, is probably my greatest sort of area that I should be working on.
So consider this. Is it possible that there's a part of you who doesn't want you to change? Remember, your subconscious wants one objective at all times, and that's to keep you safe. If all of a sudden you became this master at meditation, that would require a significant identity change. It might wield a limitless amount of new value, benefits, and opportunities for you. Your subconscious deep down might be like, wait a second, that's a foreign, new, unfamiliar identity. There's no way in hell I'm allowing you to step into that. I'm going to make it incredibly difficult for you to slow down and even entertain the thought of tapping into the limitless amount of power you have within you.
Yeah, it's a good point, because consciously, and we've talked about it and we've heard about it enough times now for me to consciously go, there's something about this, I'm sure that this would be a positive, but there's still something that's stopping me, which potentially could be that subconscious thought process that you're talking about.
It's exactly that. It's that invisible ceiling. You know what to do. You're at least familiar with the benefits, like the literal research-backed benefits in this case of meditation. But you're right. There's still like this invisible gravitational-like force holding you back from doing what you know is likely to be really valuable for you. That in and of itself is not a lack of information problem. It's a beautiful example of a mindset problem there. There's a lack of safety and inherent fear around indulging in this behavior that's going to lead to an identity change.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Steve,
indeed.
thoughts?
Oh, so many. I mean,
50 to 70,000 thoughts.
Yeah, 80% of them
for the rest of the day.
80% of them are positive, actually, at the moment, which is remarkable. Look, the thing that stands out for me, I think, is every single expert guest that we've had on the show. Whether that is sports psychologists, high performance coaches, regardless of the background, every single one of them talks about the value of meditation and the importance of meditation. Therefore, that leads me to believe that it's possible that there's something in this.
Well, so here's my second point to you. I'm always curious because as much information as there is out there about meditation, it's still so entirely unique for every individual. So I almost wonder too, if perhaps you have an expectation of what it's supposed to be, and your experience maybe at this juncture in your meditation journey is completely night and day from that expectation. And I always like to say, if there's a gap between expectation and reality, that's what invites in frustration. And that could be the case, just is starting with it is so clear, yet it's so just kind of gray as to what meditation is versus isn't.
Oh, that's definitely true. I think the other thing is, like many golfers, we want to try something and see results. And probably pushing it to see results too early is an issue. Like people talk about the power of meditation because then it enables you to have that clearer focus on the course, and in the difficult pressure moments, you can still access your skills in a way and remain calm and focused. And and then I tried meditating once and I didn't see all of those benefits immediately. So obviously it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like it's that desire for immediacy of outcome or results over what you're putting in. And if you're not seeing that, then the discipline to stay at it is a challenge.
Yeah. It's that impatience, wanting results yesterday. You're spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I'm guilty of that, be it with meditating or a swing change or, a new putting grip or, a new set of Vokey wedges, whatever the case may be. I want to see them. I want to see a difference. But I understand that it's not that that direct and it's not that linear. But to your point about understanding what it is versus, your expectations versus reality, we've had, I suppose, tongue-in-cheek conversations about sitting in a dark room saying or staring at a candle or staring at a golf ball on the floor or whatever the case may be. Like, what are some practical methods that you would suggest as a way of doing it?
First and foremost, just get clear on what your intention is. Is it to slow down? Is it peace? Is it quiet? Is it to recharge? Meditation can look night and day different from every session, and between the three of us, we can have three wildly different practices. So to give you an example, for me, is I really work on cultivating a practice that allows me to sit, I call it a quietude of nothingness. So think I put big noise canceling headphones on. I put my sleep eye mask on. I want to be blocked out from the world for 10 minutes. I do this once a day in between calls typically. So for me, it's about coming to a place of quiet. And I like to bring one short sentence, statement, or even a word to my practice that is anchored to my breath. So it might be inhale, calm, exhale, stress. I start that way. Let me be frank. My mind might drift 50,000 times in those 10 minutes. But this moment I notice it drift, I just bring it back to that statement, or I bring it back to my breath. I think it's often forgotten or lost that meditation, breath work, hypnosis, it is a skill. And swinging a golf club, it takes repetition. So if we think about anchoring in our breath or a positive affirmation while we're in this meditative state, sooner or later through repetition, you're going to start catching your mind drifting a little bit earlier. You're going to have a little bit easier of a time getting back to that focused intention. And in time, the whole experience will feel easier and more rejuvenative for you.
Part of it as well is you talk about your mind drifting when you sit down to meditate. And, I think both of us are, really struggle with that. I'll drift into to-do lists and the conversations that have happened during the day and all of the other things that should have been said that weren't said, and the pressure of all the tasks that are floating on it. And then you kind of, can say, no, stop it. I'm supposed to be clearing the mind and not thinking about anything, and then getting cranky at myself for my inability to clear my mind and starting to feel like I'm a failure who is not good at meditating. So let's add that to the list of things I can't do.
Let's go and hit balls now.
Yeah.
I'm not good at meditation.
You know what I mean?
I'm good at the range.
Yeah.
I can focus there. Let's go and hit balls.
I'm good at doing. I'm not good at being. So it kind of snowballs. How do we deal?
Well, first of all, so many points I want to share this. You bring up such a relatable point for myself and everybody listening. Doing is often a coping mechanism for fear of being.
Absolutely, it is. I'm happy to acknowledge that, and it's really effective.
Yeah, it totally is.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, I'm trying to think the angle I want to go. So if you notice this discomfort, this resistance, and you're fighting these thoughts, a little hack, if you will, is the subconscious doesn't register or recognize the word no. So if you say, don't focus, don't do that, it just hears do that. I mean, we've all heard the cliche, don't think of that pink elephant riding a unicycle. Well, now we're all picturing that pink elephant riding a unicycle. So that, again, coming back to our earlier conversation around word choice, that's an important fact too. So we just have to acknowledge that the way the subconscious works and kind of hears and transmits information. But then when we go back to that silent state, it's just accepting where you are. I think oftentimes people hear go meditate for 30 minutes a day. Well, if you can't meditate for 30 seconds, why are you starting with 30 minutes? I have some of my clients start in 1-minute intervals. Set a timer on your phone. Start building easy wins. Those quick wins build momentum. They bolster confidence. And the fastest, most effective way to build confidence in any new skill is to make a commitment to an action step and to actually follow through on it. So I have an imagination, you could sit here and be like, yes, I can commit to meditating for 1 minute a day. You do that for 10 days in a row. I also have an imagination. You're going to feel pretty confident about meditating for 2 minutes a day. And then we do that for a period of time. So it's setting yourself up for success to get a lot of easy wins, to build that confidence quickly so you can ride that positive snowball effect, the upward spiral, to now anchoring it into a part of who you are, a part of your daily practice. Even if it never surpasses 3 minutes, it's powerful and effective for you.
Andy Walker, can you do 1 minute a day, do you think? Can you squeeze that into your busy schedule?
Oh, maybe I can give it a crack at least. One thing I'd like to ask Paul is that because we've talked about the difference between active meditation and passive meditation. Because one of the things that I do when I'm going out and walking my dog is that I do try and incorporate some meditation in that, take him out for sort of 20 minutes in the morning. Is there a benefit to passive meditation over active meditation, or what's, because I struggle with the passive meditation. Active meditation, no problem at all. Of course, I'm doing something, right?
Yeah, you're doing.
So if you can just maybe give me a little bit of a framework as to what the benefits of one over the other.
It's interesting. A man named Joseph Campbell, famous author, once said that all of life is a meditation. I don't have any more wisdom to share on par with that, but I thought it was timely and noteworthy to share here. Because if we think about it, what's underneath meditation? It's an intention to be present in the moment. And sometimes we need a rhythmic activity or a vibrant sensory experience. You think walking, running can be meditative. You think walking out in nature with your dog, you have all of your senses are heightened, the beautiful sounds, sights, colors, whatever it may be. So both aspects are valuable. Let's be very clear there. I think we're all in agreement there. I think really it's just finding what works best for you. I don't think there's ever a wrong way to do it. It all comes back to what is the intention? If you find walking your dog outside and really setting the intention to be mindful of the beautiful scenery you're walking around, to be observant, to hear and see what is taking place around you, and you're doing so, probably the biggest hack of all, with your cell phone so far away, removed from the picture that you're not distracted and glued to your phone, that might be all you need. Now, I do think there is a collection of different unique benefits when we are sitting in silence, not relying on external stimuli, and we're cultivating that sense of being and presence internally. But both aspects are very valuable.
I thought you were just giving me permission to never sit down and actually do a passive meditation there, Paul.
But let me give you the specific benefit. The golf course, you're standing over your ball. Yes, you can look around for a certain amount of time, but essentially at the end, you've got to lock in and cultivate that presence internally on demand. And I want nothing more for you to hit a perfect shot every time you step up to the ball.
Yes. Those last couple of sentences there, I was like, yes, I don't have to sit down and passively meditate. And then those last couple of sentences just cut me down.
No. See, Paul's a really nice guy and he's trying to answer in a polite fashion. But, my takeout is, Andy Walker, you are replacing being with doing because you don't want to confront the being aspect of things. So,
not sure what you're talking about.
I don't even think he heard you.
Look, we're honest with each other, Paul. I think that's the beauty of this relationship. So, hypnosis. I do want to come back to this topic because I'm really curious about what it is and how it works and how you go about doing it. And, I'm positive that you're not going to sit there with the pocket watch and spin it and, make me bark like a chicken or anything along those lines. So
bark like a chicken.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm an animal expert. Don't you worry. So how does it work? What's the story? Talk me through it.
Yeah. So I always like to begin by telling or stating what it is not. Because as you alluded to, whether it's in the States here, Hollywood, Las Vegas, and just the movies and internet around the world, we get this connotation or this image of hypnosis of, yes, barking like a dog or a chicken, your preference. I can get you to do both. Swinging a pocket watch, me yelling the word sleep. And although, let me be candid, that is a form of hypnotism purely for entertainment purposes. It is unlike anything you and I or any of my clients do. Hypnosis is not mind control. It is not brainwashing. You do not surrender your deepest, darkest secrets. I don't put you asleep. Every step of the way, if you were a client right now, you are awake, you are alert, you are conscious, you are in control. So the way I define hypnosis is a state of deep relaxation with the intention to make a positive change. The under the radar piece of information about hypnosis, it's a safe, natural state of mind that every single one of us and every single listener has already been in probably multiple times per day. Hypnosis is characterized by the type of brain waves you are producing in any given moment. And when we primarily produce what are known as theta brain waves, that is that period or that collective state of hypnosis. It's the same state we are all in when we transition from sleeping to waking, when we are caught up in our favorite book, lost in our favorite TV show, or when we are in that intoxicating flow state on the golf course. Those are all periods of hypnosis. Now, the magic, if you will, the beauty, the power of hypnosis lies in two big benefits we achieve in that deeply relaxed state. Number one is in that relaxed state, we are able to bypass the critical factor of our conscious mind. All of us have that internal critic that says, Paul, you suck. Paul, that'll never work. Paul, why bother? In hypnosis, we can sidestep all of that noise and negativity. And then two, we're able to connect directly with your subconscious mind, which is home to, like I shared earlier, your imagination, your intuition, and your creative power. And it's home to your emotions, your memories, your values, your habits, and your beliefs. So I use hypnosis as a tool to uncover the origin of some of those outdated beliefs, destructive habits, and counterproductive fears that are keeping you stuck in that proverbial bunker. And hypnosis allows us to not only uncover the origin of those beliefs and behaviors, but allows us to begin unlearning them or upgrading them so that now your collection of beliefs and behaviors is in alignment with the identity of you that is necessary to break through that glass ceiling.
Okay, so let me translate some of this into terms that, if I can sort of pull the thread through the conversation that we've had. So,
please.
If I've got a healthy dose of imposter syndrome / my self-perception is of a particular level on the golf course and I'm struggling to break through that, which is the truth at the moment. And that's linked to a lot of experiences through life, in particular the formative years through childhood of, say being brought up in an environment which probably, looking back on it now, was more fixed mindset than growth mindset in sometimes. If I were to then try and address all of those issues through standard therapy and conversations, my critical conscious mind is going to be present telling me that none of this is true and cannot change. But the purpose of hypnosis is to be a bit of a circuit breaker to get around that, to actually do that deeper work so that the critical thought processes don't come in and get in the way. Am I kind of on the right path there?
I'm gonna extract what you shared and reproduce it on social media as a beautiful explanation. You hit the nail on the head. Yeah, very well said. And I love how you even brought in traditional therapy. Because that's a commonly explored route. And I'll be candid, traditional therapy has been very valuable and beneficial for me in certain areas of my life. But when it comes to really achieving fast, deep-rooted, lasting, effective change, traditional therapy can be costly from a financial perspective, but also a time perspective, because at the end of the day, traditional therapy is having a conversation in a conscious state of mind that only reinforces or re-ingrains some of the neural pathways responsible for the negative thinking, feeling, and behaving. As you alluded to so brilliantly, hypnosis is able to bypass that negativity and nonsense, tap into the subconscious, an opportunity to rewire, create new neural pathways, if you will, to reinforce new beliefs and behaviors that now can replace some of those outdated ones that allows you to begin thinking, feeling, and behaving in alignment with the person you wish to become.
Thoughts, Andy Walker?
Look, so many thoughts. One of the things that you said with traditional therapy is that it has a tendency to ingrain those previous experiences. So does that mean, because you sometimes hear about people who are in traditional therapy, they become reliant on their therapist, and all of a sudden they grab hold of that person and they rely on that person, I guess, for their well-being. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
I'll answer with a research study. That way there's a little bit more different perspective. You're absolutely right. So there's this really neat study done, believe it or not, like 50 years ago. And it was a research review of all of the available literature comparing the impact of traditional therapy versus hypnotherapy. And the term they used was like average impact, like positive impact or recovery score. So what researchers found was that on average, surveying all of these studies over a long period of time, was that traditional therapy yielded, I believe, a 38% positive impact or recovery, which is nothing to write home about, to say the least, after an average of 600 sessions, which is weekly therapy for more than 10 years. So you're right, the reliance, the attachment. Now, contrast that to the impact hypnotherapy had. It yielded an average of 93% positive impact or recovery after an average of 6 sessions.
Wow.
Fascinating, right?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So then coming back to hypnotherapy, what's the process? Like, is there a set process that you go through, or is it very individual based on the individual needs? And what do you do? Like, I shouldn't say what do you do. We're trying to get away from doing, but what's the process? Process, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy, all we do is just sit and be together for an hour. That's it. No. Exactly. Yeah, I could definitely speak to kind of the framework, if you will. So, like, let me talk even about just a unique coaching call. So, unlike traditional therapy or coaching, even where you're just talking for 60 minutes, a session with me might have, let's call it 12 to 15 minutes of conversation. We're getting clarity on what the problem is. I'm digging in. I want to know, like, people get sick of me. Like, how does it feel? What's the emotion? What's the physical sensation of the emotion? So I'm painting a really visceral experience of the emotion, the physical sensation, how it's hurting you, holding you back, contrasting that with what is our dream state, where we want to go. So after about, again, 15-ish minutes or so, we're then going to start the hypnosis session. And what that looks like is we're going to begin with getting just your mind and your body nice and relaxed. So for those of you two and listeners who have a meditation or even a yoga background, there's some familiarity, some overlap in the beginning there. You know, that period of time, its goal is to get you nice and relaxed. That's a way to metaphorically start letting your guard down, if you will, you know, starting to bypass that conscious mind and start tapping into the subconscious mind. From there, it is more or less having a conversation in a deeply relaxed state. There is a framework or a collection of frameworks I use to help prompt you to go back in time to find these other pivotal moments in your life based on whatever it is we're working on, where you felt the exact same way. You had the same emotional experience. And that allows us to go back in time to one of these pivotal moments where you started learning or coping with a certain belief or behavior that might have served your immediate goal at that time at, 7 years old, that is now at 47 years old, actually counterproductive. And we work to unlearn it, to heal it, to let it go, whatever needs to be done to get you operating at your best.
So talking about going back in time to when, things were ingrained and feelings were created. Like one of the things I've always been curious about with hypnosis is there's so much of the early years that I literally can't consciously remember. Like a lot of those little incidents and those sorts of things I couldn't put. There's no way that I could put a finger on some of those, pieces of emotional baggage and say this is where it started. So how does the process draw that out of you? Like, I'm really curious about that side of it. Do you start to get this? Part. Do you get this super memory power as a result of hypnosis? Is that what happens? I'm guessing not.
I mean, I wish we could. We should start describing it that way. We probably shouldn't also. So, in a nutshell, you're just the bulk of that first part I talked about, getting you nice and relaxed, your mind relaxed, your body relaxed. Like, that is where a lot of the benefit comes from. Because what also ultimately happens is some of these pivotal moments that come up when you're 7 years old, when you're even 3 years old, at the time. I'll use an example. One of my clients, something we worked through. This is going to sound silly to everybody because the subconscious is irrational. The conscious mind tries to rationalize and justify it. It doesn't make sense most of the time. But one of my clients was bullied by one of his best friends in 4th grade eating lunch. He was told that his ears looked funny when he chewed his food. We're all smiling now because right now as adults, that kind of seems funny. It's not a big deal. But for that little boy, he did not have the emotional toolkit to regulate, to handle that situation. So for that little child, it was everything for him. It was so hurtful, destructive, whatever the word may be. So oftentimes, not only do we struggle to find these memories because the conscious mind is blocking us, but we also don't really feel in the moment they're emotionally charged moments worth revisiting. The subconscious I mentioned earlier always wants to keep us safe. And in a hypnotic state, it's always going to either take us to or show us what we need to see to achieve the goal we're working on. And it's that deep state of relaxation that I kind of alluded to earlier. It just lets the metaphorical guard down. And it's almost like we tap into a library of memories and, I'm going to lead you where we need to go. You ultimately remain in control, and we get to really see and revisit where some of these outdated beliefs and behaviors formed.
So if we admit that this glass ceiling issue that we've been talking about is rooted in experiences from earlier years, in a session, am I going to miraculously identify what caused it? Is that how it works?
So I don't want to say, I never like to overpromise, especially around the topic of hypnosis. It is very possible as early as the first or second session, we could get to that exact core. It could be that moment when you were 8 years old and XYZ happened. Oftentimes, it's a little bit more gradual because that's not going to be the only isolated experience in which, these collection of beliefs and behaviors reared their ugly heads. It might have happened at 34, at 26, at 18, at 14, at 13. And we'll get back very early in your life quite quickly until we get to the core, that one origin moment. It might take a handful of sessions, but we can get there quite quickly.
Wow. That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share, I think it's helpful to add context real quick. Let me give you an example. Is that cool?
Yeah. Please do.
So I have a client of mine. He's a professional poker player, though. So similar but different. Same story. In poker, the closer you get, let me think how to phrase this. The closer you get to the money, the higher the pressure, the higher stakes. You need to run really deep in a tournament for you to actually make any significant money. So let's say there's 2,000 entries in a tournament. You're not going to start making really good money till the top 100, the top 50, if you will. So my client started noticing every time he got close to the money or he got close to the final table, he was just self-destructing and making all of these wild behaviors that in a logical state of operation, he would never make. He had this fear of success. Who was he on the other side of success if he started winning these tables and taking home six-figure scores? Well, we were able to derive from an early childhood. His dad was an absentee father. His dad, to be frank, was a drunk. His dad was never around. About the age of 8 years old, his dad started coming around again. His dad started picking him up from school. They started hanging out together after school. One day, his dad started him how to taught him, there's the word, how to play the game of chess. And within a couple of weeks, my client starts beating his dad in the game of chess. So much so, he's beating his dad consistently that his dad stops coming around. And it wasn't until 7 years later that he saw his dad again. So
Wow.
What can we deduce from that story? That little boy more or less formed a belief. It's not safe to either win. It's not safe to succeed. Because at 8 years old, I started winning and I lost my dad. Again, consciously here in this present moment, it kind of seems a little irrational, but our subconscious is not rational. So for him and I, that moment came up actually very quickly. I think it was on our second session together. And he went on to make many final tables and is having a wonderful poker career since. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of big emotions to process from an experience, a memory like that. And kudos to him for having the courage to continue showing up every day, to face that, to work through it. And now he's on the other side of that particular challenge and doing quite well.
That's an extreme example. I think, you know what this is making me think of? We come into this as humans that are pretty self-centered normally. And so I think, all of our conversation's been about us and, how we might unpack our own childhood and the ways in that, the experiences that we had when we were younger have framed who we are today. You've got me thinking about, as dads, we're both dads with two kids of similar ages. What are we doing to screw our own kids up that we don't even realize?
You're not alone. So actually, I have my first little one on the way. Could be any day, any week now.
Oh, that's exciting.
So it is, and I've had the thought too, and it's a conversation I've had for myself and with clients and friends of mine. At the end of the day, I mean, the fact that you two are here hosting a podcast, having a conversation about this, I have an imagination. You're leaps and bounds ahead of most peers, and maybe even people in your family when it comes to that level of introspection, having the courage to look inward and to take ownership for why you do some of the things you do. So this is just validation and reflection to both of you that you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
And also too, like, you're here with that awareness. Most people lack that awareness. And it's very easy to get caught up in trying to be this perfect parent. And I've stressed about this already enough. But at the end of the day, you and I, three of us both know, like, we are humans. We are not robots. We will make 1,001 different mistakes. So long as we have the courage to accept them, to own them, to learn from them, we're in a great place.
That is good to hear.
So then, Paul, tell me, from the hypnotherapy session where you're going through that framework, going through that process, at some point the person has to be self-reliant. So I'm assuming that there's a thing as self-hypnosis, and you can actually learn to take what you're teaching. Because I mean, say me for example, I know nothing at this stage about, over the last hour I've learned a lot about hypnotherapy, but I starting this conversation, I knew nothing. So I start with you with the hypnotherapy sessions, and I'm assuming at some point there's a self-reliance that I develop skills to be able to go through that process and go through a self-hypnotherapy session just on my own.
Yes and no. And I will elaborate.
Okay.
So first and foremost, my priority is to always meet the individual where he or she is at. So with that said, if you're struggling with meditation right now, you have a very limited meditation background, I'm not going to throw you in the deep end of self-hypnosis. What I am going to do is provide you with either your own unique or access to guided hypnosis, which we can use interchangeably with guided meditations. Just again, we need to form the habit and the practice of stillness, of being, and having a guide to help you, whether it's focus on your breath or go on this intrinsic journey. If you already had a strong foundation there and there was a desire to learn the self-hypnosis, it is essentially doing the guided meditation using yourself as the guide. From that you're going to get a ton of tremendous benefit. When it comes to doing some of that deep, the technical word is like regression type work, going back in childhood, you can do some of that in a self-guided way, complementing that with some journaling and whatnot. It's going to be a far more faster and effective process to really get to the core of some of these bigger rocks that we need to move when doing so in a one-on-one capacity with an expert and a credentialed hypnotherapist.
Yes, but I'm still like assuming that there is a point where, say, you're on the golf course and you're under pressure. You might be on the 13th or 14th hole, and you're starting to have some of these sort of thoughts and feelings come back. Is that sort of the area where you can maybe go through? There's a framework that you can go through with a sort of mini self-hypnosis session, or is that where you come back to breath work and maybe a bit of an affirmation or something that a calming process that you've got?
Great question. I appreciate that clarity. So in those situations, I'm always first to anchor to the breath. Find the breath, the positive affirmation to anchor into is great. I don't think we need to make it any more complex or challenging in trying to invite in this, unique hypnotic script when you're in the midst of playing 14 rounds to win the club championship, which you two are both going to win this upcoming tournament. I've got the utmost faith. But with that said, the breath is the quickest, rapid, effective way to ground yourself in the present moment and to be used as a tool to control the dials. Where do you need focus, confidence, excitement, regret, shame, frustration? You can control the dials of where you want those respective emotions simply with your breath.
There's much to ponder.
And I will say, though, I like a pre-round guided hypnosis. That's what I have all my clients do, my golfing clients, before their round. That's going to allow you to start really strengthening your emotional resiliency, because you're going to begin to see the confident, positive aspects of the round you're trying to play. But I'm also going to have you go through the experience of making mistakes, having unfortunate outcomes well before you step on the course. So you're already strengthening your resiliency, knowing, the three of us know golf is not a game of perfect. You're going to make plenty of mistakes. How quickly can you bounce back? And if you're already seeing and feeling what it's like to make a mistake and quickly recharge, reset, and bounce back, it becomes far easier to actually execute in that given moment during a round.
No, it does make a lot of sense. And I mean, we've uncovered during the course of this show with people that we've spoken to the benefits of realistic expectations, of acceptance of outcomes, and acceptance of outcomes before the shot has been hit as well is an important concept. The ability to bounce back from bad breaks and poor shots and poor decisions and some of those elements. So I think anything that can enhance that and can make that process work better, we're definitely on the right path. I'm also mindful that we've just ticked over the hour mark with you, Paul, so we're probably stretching the friendship a little bit, but this is far out. This has been a good conversation. I have really enjoyed this. And here for us, we're recording in the morning in Australia, so now it's about to put the other hat on and actually go to the day job. But geez, this is going to give me a lot to think about whilst I'm there tapping away at work. So we thoroughly appreciate it. And I think, Andy, it's fair to say we'd love to get Paul back, because I feel like there's so many questions that we haven't yet gotten a chance to go through during this interview. But
100%. And I think that we've talked a lot about, the mental side of golf. And hypnotherapy has come up, but I've never really understood the difference between sitting down for a meditation session and sitting down for a hypnosis session. It's a really interesting sort of concept of actually understanding that your issues on the golf course aren't necessarily golf related. That to me is a really, I guess, a bit of a light bulb moment in my understanding of perhaps where I'm at on the golf course.
I love how you articulate that. You're so right. And when you have that moment of clarity, the light bulb of awareness, it creates an opportunity to now align the most effective action steps to get out of your own way, if you will. I mean, we're all conditioned in the golf world. It just means I got to hit 1,000 more balls per week and I'm going to break through. But at the end of the day, it's really just about looking inward, having a safe, productive space to do that type of work that you need to do, so you can start letting go of or unlearning those beliefs, fears, and behaviors that just simply aren't serving you any longer.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about the power of words, it's something that we are very aware of the types of phrases and the things that people say to themselves on the golf course and off the golf course. But, being a golf show, we'll keep it there. And how important it is and how limiting some of those phrases are that we use all the time. And I loved your explanation that the process of building a word, putting the letters together is spelling. Like, I'm going to hang on to that one because both my kids are big Harry Potter fans. They're going to love that when I tell them about it later.
That's exactly why it latched on for me.
It's like there's truth in these little isms that pop up as well, and they're good perspective shifters, because it is so important the way that we talk to ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves, that inner narrative that goes on, because it gets stronger and stronger in big moments and pressure moments. That narrative starts to take control more and more. And one of the things which I'm trying to remember which of our guests was explaining, but the fact that thoughts are just thoughts they're not necessarily true. They're dealing with imperfect information because you don't know all of the outcomes. You don't know what the other players are actually doing, but you're assuming that everything's going well for them and poorly for you, or vice versa. But just understanding that they're just thoughts and they don't have to control you. There's power in that as well. So, no, this has been an awesome conversation, Paul. Thank you so much for reaching out and coming on the show. Before we wrap up, I think it's only right and proper that we give you the opportunity to plug where people can find you if they found this conversation to be interesting. Where can they go and find Paul Salter for more information, and how can you help?
Yeah, well, first, Steve and Andy, thank you for having me. This was an outstanding conversation. I just say a big thank you for your preparation. You know, as a podcast host myself, I know I take pride in doing my prep and having questions or just being able to navigate a conversation so organically. So thank you to the both of you for making this fly by and be such a blast. In terms of me, you can find me at thegolfhypnotherapist.com. If you continue to want to add more podcasts to your repertoire, the Scratch Golfers Mindset podcast is where I publish twice per week. Or if you like to read your content, the More Pars Than Bogeys newsletter is where I publish a free newsletter every Friday.
That is amazing. I have listened to the podcast. It's very good. So thoroughly recommend it to all the pilgrims. Paul, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Andy Walker, any final words before we let Paul go about his evening, as I think it would be? Yeah.
Oh, no, just wanted to reiterate, the gratitude we have for you coming on the show. It's something that has just given me an enormous amount to just to consider and to mull over. And yeah, I think that there's so much in what we've just talked about. That my conscious mind sort of telling me that yes, it's worthwhile versus my subconscious mind wanting to go and hit balls. I think maybe we may have crossed a little bit of a threshold here. So yeah,
that is huge.
Looking forward to catching up again.
Yeah,
likewise.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Wow. Andy Walker, that was quite something. I'm not sure if it's what I expected or not what I expected, or better, or
it's not what I expected. I have to say, there are some concepts in there that I didn't expect. I mean, I've always been pretty good at compartmentalizing my life, right? I've got my health and fitness and sports, that's me personally. I've got my family life, I've got my business, and career, and I've got those pretty much, sorted out into their own sort of boxes. But the concept that the issues that you've got on the golf course and what you're going through on the golf course aren't necessarily golf related, and they can go back to potentially childhood experiences. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a revelation, but just gives, I guess, a bit of context, and a lot of food for thought as to where my game is.
It does. It's definitely a rabbit hole that you could go a long way down. I mean, it's logical when you think it through, when you think about, sort of the fundamentals of psychology, and a lot of the ways that you think and that you frame things is set by about the age of 7, I think it is. So it's logical, I think, that would also carry through to the way that, therefore those personality traits and those ways of viewing the world would impact on your game of golf. Yeah. So I think logical brain
really
goes, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I did a reasonable amount of personal development work in my late 20s and early 30s. And here I am, almost 52. And for me still to look at that and go, okay, well, perhaps a lot of the challenges and things that I'm experiencing on the golf course, even though I've been through this personal development journey, still relate to some subconscious experiences that I had as whether it be a young child or teenager, or it's a pretty, you could go down a rabbit hole with it. You
could, and at some point we probably will.
Yes.
So that could be a bit of fun. But I mean, look, it's challenging. Like I really found the glass ceiling conversation, quite interesting, because that's something that I'm battling with a little bit at the moment and trying to get my mind straight to take on the country championships in parks. That's sort of what drove a lot of that conversation, which obviously Pilgrims, we did both qualify for the field. I think we might have mentioned that during the interview, which is quite exciting. But dealing then with thinking, oh, I might be one of the higher handicappers that's actually going out there and I don't want to come last is, kind of one of the overarching feelings. It's such a bad outlook to go into a tournament thinking about. So, that concept around backing yourself that we were talking about, but also about sort of understanding what are some of those limiting thought processes that have existed for quite some time. Where's that come from? What's driving that? And what can I do about that? And what can I do about that in 2.5 weeks? To try and deal with the situation before it, before we have to step out there.
We did have that conversation earlier in the week, around the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And that was before we had this interview with Paul Salter. And at that stage, we talked about that whole, you got this versus, back yourself.
Yeah.
And cause I've tried to frame it in that way, in that not say to myself, you've got this. I've always tried to go, okay, well, you've done the work. Okay. I've put the hours in, I've qualified for whether it be the New South Wales Country Championships or whatever endeavor in life. Okay. I deserve to be here. So back yourself, which is sort of a reframing of where you're at, but it has taken a fair bit of intentional work for me to have that outlook.
And it's a good outlook. It's definitely one that I'm working on borrowing for the next month. Because it's that, that feeling of worthiness, to take that on. So that's the challenge. And you've got to do that. And you've got to find an authentic way of doing that.
Yes.
That's not fake cheerleader self-talk, because our brains just see through that in about 5 seconds flat. So
correct.
I think that's the challenge. So, but yeah, very, very well-timed conversation. Paul Salter, thanks for coming on to the show. And Pilgrims, we'll drop all of the contact details of how you can get in contact with Paul, check out his material, check out his website and whatnot in the show notes, because I think there's a lot of really, really good value in there for everyone. Certainly for us, we'll be delving into it and add that to the list of very insightful people to talk to after, the likes of Neil Smith, Michael Leonard, John Weir, John Sherman, even the great man himself, Scotty Fisher. So,
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I might have a chat to give him a call over the next couple of days just to see how he feels about hypnotherapy and if he's ever sort of delved into that field. That'd be a interesting line of conversation with him.
It most certainly would be. That would be fantastic. But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's blown me away. There's so much to think about, so much to unpack. And I think that's an interview to listen to on a number of occasions to try and just make sure we really absorb all that fantastic information.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we both can say that at some stage we'll both engage Paul and at least, go through a couple of sessions with him just to see where it leads. I mean, I think there's so much good that can come out of it. And not just on the golf course. I think in life in general, I think there's a lot there that, a lot of benefits that I think that it's really a must do.
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. All right, Andy Walker, is there any other parting thoughts before we wrap this one up and let the Pilgrims get about their day?
No, look, I've had a lot of fun. Awesome conversation. Paul's a great guy, and looking forward to delving into it. So there's really only one thing left to do,
which is,
and that is to rock on, Pilgrims.
Thanks for listening to us today. We love hearing from our Pilgrims, so please reach out to us through any of the links in the show notes. We know golf is hard, so we hope we can help you shoot better scores and inspire you to keep trying. Rock on, Pilgrims.